we'll get started.
Sure, sounds good. I just want to welcome everybody to Founders Meetup and want to tell you just a quick second about FoundersForge. I've had the slides rotating for a little bit, but FoundersForge is a 501c3 nonprofit that is built to, sorry, one second. Yeah, there we go. FoundersForge is a 501c3 nonprofit that is here for the underdog entrepreneurs in the Appalachian Highlands. And we're really all about supporting all types of entrepreneurs, and we're hosting a monthly meetup as well as a series of other events and boot camps and other programs throughout the year, even in these crazy times that we're living in. And really love for you guys to get involved. And if you want to get involved, you can find out all about us at myfoundersforge.com. So Ro, why don't you take it away and tell us a little about yourself and share your experiences with crowdfunding.
Yeah, so hey, welcome everyone. My name is Rodolphe Louis, and I'm the founder and CEO of ActionVFX. We are a visual effects company located in downtown Johnson City. And I'm definitely very excited about this topic because it's something that is very dear to me. With starting ActionVFX, we ended up having to do a crowdfunding campaign, which was a Kickstarter campaign. And definitely learned a lot during that experience, and it's a lot that I think can really help anyone, whether one, trying to raise money for your product, but also, that's just good marketing information to have either way. So I do have quite a bit to cover, so I decided it would be good to just create a doc that I could just share with everyone, and you could use that to follow along, and you could also use that for your reference later on. So I just pasted the doc in the chat right here on Zoom. So go ahead and check that out. Actually, someone click it and make sure that you can see it, that the permissions are good. Okay. All right, sweet. So let's go ahead and get started. I will basically power through all these notes, and then hopefully we'll have some time near the end for some questions, and I can go into more details on certain specific aspects on how to do certain things. So yeah, let's get started. So lessons for crowdfunding. So why this topic? Basically in 2015, I raised a little over $59,000 on Kickstarter in order to create a new product line for my company, Rodolphe LLC. Product line ended up being ActionVFX, which is now more popular and profitable than the company that birthed it. So ActionVFX kind of took over from the original plans there. So over the years, I've gotten a lot of questions from people about it, and I wanted to cover it because I really believe crowdfunding is a great way to raise money for your business. The goal of this presentation is to go over all the different steps I took and the various strategies I applied that helped us triple our Kickstarter campaign goals. Initially, we're trying to raise $20,000 and ended up raising almost 60, which was definitely much needed. Okay, so some basics. So what is crowdfunding? Crowdfunding is the practice of funding a project or venture by raising small amounts of money from a large number of people, typically via the internet. Some popular crowdfunding sites are Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Fundable, and iFundWomen. So there are two main types of crowdfunding sites. There are more, but the two main ones are reward-based sites and equity-based sites. The most popular reward-based site would be Kickstarter. And for something like that, you essentially give your backers, which is what they call people that back your project and give money to it, some rewards in exchange for their money. And one example of an equity-based site would be Fundable. There, your backers actually can get equity in your company in exchange for their investment. So I'll focus on reward crowdfunding for this presentation just because, one, it's the one I'm most familiar with, but also why give away part of your company when you don't have to? So hey, if you do have an option for an alternate way to raise the money, then why not go that way, right? So who can crowdfund? And for anyone that just joined us, if you go to the chat, there is a link to a doc that I'm going over that you can use for your reference later on. So,
Ro, do you want to share your screen with it, or do you want it just to be a reference document?
I guess I could. Let's see. Share screen. All right. Are you guys seeing everything? Sweet. Okay, cool. So who can crowdfund? Well, anyone can crowdfund. There is not any specific rules about to who can raise money through crowdfunding, as long as your idea is interesting to an audience and it addresses a need that they have. Of course, it qualifies. I've seen people, crowdfund all types of projects, from films, video games, board games, tech gadgets, software, sports gear, office supplies, courses, cars. Like, you can do it for anything. If I could raise money to literally blow things up, I think your idea probably qualifies for crowdfunding. So, and crowdfunding isn't limited to only new startups either, because existing companies can and do use sites like Kickstarter, for example, to raise money for new product lines. This is what I did with ActionVFX. A friend of mine owns a software company that only made software for Windows at the time. And they use Kickstarter to not just raise money, but also to validate whether or not there was even a big need for a Mac version. So they got the funding, they did the Mac version, and now they're a lot more successful because of it. So these are just some backstory on crowdfunding. So let's start going over some of the lessons that I learned in this whole endeavor. So lesson one, crowdfunding is hard. 60% of Kickstarter campaigns, and that's just a site for Kickstarter, but I mean, that may vary from site to site, but 60% of Kickstarter campaigns fail. So yeah, running a successful crowdfunding campaign is not easy. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of clever marketing, and a whole lot of coffee. I say this to mainly set the stage. Like, crowdfunding isn't like just some easy path to get free money. Like, everything that is worth doing is going to take work. But I like to look at the bright side, and I feel like if 67% fail, then that means 33% are successful, which I do think are some pretty good odds for something that could change your entire business and change your entire life. So, lesson two, you have to reverse engineer your audience. Everything you're doing, whether it's starting a business or developing a new product, it's important that you know your audience, and the same goes for a Kickstarter campaign. You're literally selling your idea. So you should know your audience so well that you can start thinking like them. For example, before we ran our Kickstarter, we surveyed around 300 VFX artists, and they were like our main audience for the company that we're doing, to learn why we could improve on the issues that they were facing. And the keyword here is they. It can be tempting to, make it all about you, but it's really not about you. In the end, it's all about your audience. So you need to cater to mankind's selfish nature, which is what's in it for me. So you may be very passionate, but once people get to your page, they're really just asking what's in it for me as they're browsing. And if you can clearly communicate that in a way that's attractive to them, then you have increased your chances of succeeding. All right, so lesson three, start building your audience before the Kickstarter actually goes live. A common misconception is that if you launch your campaign on a popular crowdfunding site like Kickstarter or Indiegogo or something like that, then people will just browse the site, find your project, back it, and your campaign will be successful without having to bring in your own audience from scratch. This is false. Like, there is some truth to that, but overall, like, the platform is not going to bring that much of the audience for you. In our specific campaign, only 6.2% of our funding came organically from the Kickstarter Discover sections, which is where someone that just happens to be browsing Kickstarter can see, oh, this project is there on Discover, which won't always happen if your project is not popular enough anyways. So that's something to just count on. And then an additional 2.6% of funding came from Kickstarter, essentially remarketing the campaign to users that viewed it, which was a great thing that they did. For example, if you viewed the campaign, but you didn't back it, a few days later, it would like send you a reminder like, hey, this is this campaign you checked out, like there's some days left on it, do you want to back it? So that was really good. So we got to 0.67% of our funding that way, which was great. But I mean, overall, the Kickstarter theoretically only helped us raise about 8.87% of our funding, which means about 91% of the money still had to come from elsewhere. And I decided to include this, which is actual real data from our Kickstarter campaign that actually shows where different people were coming from, like the different sources that backers were coming from, how many backers came from those sources, how much money that they pledged. So I thought that was a cool thing to kind of show, to give you more of an idea of how all that works. And over here, you can see like the discovery sections for Kickstarter. So you can see there are different news sites, our website, Facebook, Reddit. That was a good strategy I found out later on is, hey, let's just post on Reddit and Redditors will find out about it and, back the project. So there was like just many different things we tried to try to get the money any way that we could. So when we did our Kickstarter, we were fortunate enough to have been building our audience for 4 years since, Rodolphe as a company was already existed and was already doing projects. But what if you're starting from scratch? What if you, don't have years of building out an audience? Well, I would say if you're currently thinking of starting a Kickstarter but have 0 followers, the first thing to do is set up a website and social media pages for your project and use like this newly created online presence to not only start telling the world about your product and your idea, but to also start gathering emails from those who are interested. Like other online communities where your potential customers hang out, other local communities. Join these communities, put yourself out there and get their emails. Like I can't highlight the get their emails part enough because it is definitely very important, because you need a way to contact all these people, because there's no point in getting people excited about something that you're doing and then you launch and you have no way to let them know, oh, this thing has launched. So why should you build your audience before the campaign goes live? A few reasons. Reason one, Kickstarter or whatever platform you use is not going to go out of its way to push your campaign if it launches with very little attention. So like the more popular it is at the start, the higher it will actually rank for organic discoverability. So if you launch it and it's just crickets, then Kickstarter is not going to go out of its way to promote you, because Kickstarter is still a business. And if you succeed, they get money too. So obviously they want to push the projects that are already showing traction. Reason number 2 is no one wants to donate to a campaign that's raised $0. That's kind of like the same concept with when you have a tip jar and you put some bills in it so that people can give tips. That's kind of the same thing. No one who, especially someone that doesn't know anything about you, they don't want to come to the page and see 0, because no one wants to be that first person, right? So if your pre-existing fans donate, then once like the strangers start coming in, it'll be a lot more comfortable, because they'll see, oh, I'm not a sucker because people are already buying into this project. So reason number 3 is your audience can help you spread the word about the campaign. You know, like people do naturally do want to support someone that they know or someone that they believe in, someone that's doing something cool that they want, you know? So these people are the people that's going to, you know, share it on, you know, on social media to their friends, share it in local meetups and things like that. So yeah, definitely, I would say if you're thinking of doing a Kickstarter campaign or any types of crowdfunding campaign, as soon as you think that you will do it, you know, start working on building your audience because you will need it to really get some good traction going. Okay, lesson 4 is leverage influencers to spread the word. I'm using influencers loosely here. For right here, I'm mainly just referring to influencers as anyone or any company that has a large audience who would be interested in your product. You know, this can be Instagram influencers, news sites for your industry, bloggers, local celebrities, actual big celebrities, organizations like FoundersForge who wants to support entrepreneurs, so on and so forth, like anyone with an audience. It's always better to build relationships with influencers before you actually need them because, you know, you never really want to start like a relationship asking for favors, right? You know, so when it's time to do the campaign, if you already have a prior relationship, then it'll just be easier because they'll be like, yeah, we know you, we want to help you and stuff. In my experience, a lot of people, especially news sites, were very hesitant to post about a Kickstarter campaign. Luckily for me, I shamelessly begged, and I'm not even kidding about that. It was essentially, yeah, I have no leverage here, so I'm just going to say what I need to say for you guys to end up posting about it. And that did actually work. So I'll share some tips on begging to news sites in a second. So these were some of the sites that ended up posting about us, and I made sure to display that on our Kickstarter page because one, that told new users that came to this page, hey, if these people posted about this, then this project must be legit. So social proof is always going to be a great thing to use in your campaign, launching a product. Like people just want to know, hey, is this a legit company? Is this a legit idea or not? So, okay, so here's some quick tips for begging news sites to share about your campaign. So basically every new industry news site that I wrote about the campaign had a very simple answer. Basically they were saying, that's not something we do. We don't promote crowdfunding campaigns. Let us know when you have a product and we'll share it. And the idea was kind of, hey, no one wants to stick their head out for you. It's like, this is just an idea, like the funding hasn't happened yet, the project hasn't happened yet. So I really understood that. So I quickly realized I was gonna have to sell them on the idea if I actually wanted to make them post it. Like these writers, they would have to actually become a fan essentially to go about it. And I also needed to make them feel that if they posted about the campaign, that they would be helping their readers and not me. Which again, remember, people are selfish and wants to know what's in it for them. They may not want to help me, who's some random guy that they've never heard of. But if it's something that would help their audience, then obviously they look better. So after I got the no's from people, I made sure to reply and politely try to communicate the impact our product would have on the industry if we were able to launch it. I mentioned, you know, the surveys that we got from the 300 artists telling us, you know, hey, what we're doing is what they need. I reassured them that there's no way sharing about our campaign could bring backlash to them because they wouldn't be endorsing the campaign, simply giving the readers a chance to support something that we know they already want. I used the fact that we're a 4-year-old company who already had a proven track record in creating similar products to reassure them that, you know, I wasn't some crazy kid that was wasting everyone's time. And every time one news site gave me a yes and posted about it, I then used their name to convince other sites that we were legitimate. So it would be like, hey, CG Press already posted about this. And their users responded, well, like you wouldn't want to deprive your users of this awesome news, would you? And so it was essentially that process that allowed me to get a lot of those sites to post about it, despite them not wanting to post about it at first. And if I scroll back up here, you can actually see a lot of them, like CG Press, Really Total, actually brought people that did contribute to the campaign. And when you're doing a crowdfunding campaign, every bit of money from that crowd counts. So I don't regret it one bit. And we've built relationships with some of these people that we're still used to this day for press releases and stuff. So there was no loss there. Okay, so lesson 5, your campaign page is really the most important thing, right? Because that's what people are going to see. So we definitely want to make sure that you get that right. So this right here is our page, which definitely spent a lot of time kind of crafting and making sure that it included all the relevant information. There is a link at the top of the page here if you actually want to see what our campaign looks like. Okay, so here are some tips to basically make your page the best it can be. So first thing is the video. You do need to have a video, even if you're not a filmmaker, you're not doing a film-based project, you definitely still need to have a video. Video is by far the best way to convince anyone of anything and really communicate a message. And statistically speaking, your campaign is twice as likely to succeed if you have a video. So you definitely want to increase your odds as much as you can. So video is a great way to actually show your audience what your idea, product is all about. It's important that you establish that you know what you're doing and that you'll be able to deliver on your promises. This will build trust with your audience. Trust is a recurring theme here because, again, a lot of these people you're probably not going to know personally. They're probably not going to have any special interest in your success. They mainly want to know what's in it for them if you succeed. So the more they trust you, the more they're willing to share about it and give you their money. If you have any behind the scenes footage, prototypes, MVPs, be sure to include it in your video. Also try to keep it at 1 to 3 minutes, depending on the project, as not to bore the viewers. I mean, definitely don't go crazy, like have a 10-minute video. I mean, there are no rules, right? So the right video could be 10 minutes, but usually just try to condense it as much as you can to capture their attention and sell them on the project. If you want to see a campaign video, you can go on the page. It is right here, and you can play it here. Okay, so the body of the post, and the body is referring to just this section with all the words and pretty pictures and GIFs and things like that. So this is where you have a chance to really get into the details of why you're here, what you're doing, and why the audience should care. Also incorporate pictures, GIFs, and graphics that can visually assist your story. This is also a great place to communicate what the funds you raise will be used for. The more specific you are, the more trustworthy you will seem to your audience, as it shows you've clearly done research on the costs required to complete your project. There are definitely many things we did. For example, you can see we had like GIFs playing to kind of show people the effects. Make sure to have a lot of pictures, more GIFs playing. And we're advertising to a very visual audience anyway, so we definitely wanted to make sure people had their senses tingled, if that made sense. And really explain in a lot of details what we were doing, what we're trying to do, why we're different, just trying to build trust. And in this How Kickstarter Helps section, that was essentially when I got to go into some details on how we would spend things and what our plans would be. For example, we can see a little timeline here that kind of showed, hey, you know, this project has already started even before we launched the Kickstarter, which again shows people that, hey, we're not just counting on them to do everything. We are doing this, we just need their help to be able to get there. So you can definitely use a lot of the inspiration there for your body. And then the last thing is the rewards. And the rewards are, of course, the most important part to your backers, because this is what they get to know, what they get in return for their support. So craft your rewards around what they would be interested in getting. I find that, you know, if you give them the opportunity to get the product at a discount or early or both, preferably both, you know, that's usually a lot more appealing to backers than, you know, giving them a coffee mug with your logo on it or something lame like that. I mean, there's a time and place to give people coffee mugs and t-shirts and pens with your logo, but definitely think about it, because at the end of the day, what do they really want? Why are they supporting your project? And in our case, they were supporting our project because we were going to address an actual need in our industry, a need that would really benefit this artist. So we were able to essentially, yeah, we didn't do any extra logo, mug, thank you cards, or any of that stuff. It was essentially, oh no, this is like a super discounted pre-order, essentially. And that worked really well because they knew, hey, if this thing happened, we would get some great products at a really cheap price. And that's all they could ask for at the end of the day. Keep the number of pledges under 10 variations. And to give you, this is kind of the example of the pledges. Like here you can see, hey, this is what you get if you pledge $15 or $49 or $75, so on and so forth. Had a lot of people pay us $500 to get a lifetime of free products from us, which now that I look back at it, it's like, man, that was such a good deal. But hey, they helped us make it happen, and now they get everything we do for free. So it's a win-win here. So not complaining, but man, that is so cheap. Okay, but keep the number of pledges under 10 variations. Adding more than that has the potential of confusing your audience. And I'm always very wary of like confusing people, because you give them too many options and all of a sudden they don't know which one to choose. Options just start kind of blending in, and it's like, yeah, confuse people, don't buy. Remember that, you know, you're confused, that's when you click out, you go to Instagram or something, and that's what people are doing this day and age. So keep it concise, keep it clear. Just, hey, if it's 5 options, give them 5 options, but don't give them 20. No one needs 20 options. This last part is very important. Make sure to actually calculate how much delivering your rewards will cost you. You know, you don't want to dig yourself into a hole by spending too much of your funding on rewards alone. In our case, it was great for us because it was a digital product, so the costs were pretty minimal as far as our reward costs. But let's say you had a physical product. If it costs you $20 to produce your product, you know, definitely keep that in mind to not make the pledge like $25, because then, hey, is that going to give you enough profit to even operate? So just kind of keep that in mind as far as how much delivering your rewards will actually cost you in the end, because you are raising money at the end of the day. You don't want to dig yourself into a hole and then the campaign is over and then you spend all the money on rewards and you still are back to square one. Okay, so lesson 6, monitor feedback after the launch. So definitely make sure, like once you launch, this is when the real work begins. It's definitely not, like, don't get me wrong, the work prior to launch is insane because you're building this page and you're making videos and you're building your audience and you're bagging new sites to post about your product. But after you launch, you know, this is not when it's like you don't get to relax. You have to keep on monitoring the feedback and keep on making improvements as you see fit. You know, maybe you notice that nobody is interested in a certain pledge or they're asking for an entire different pledge. Then that's kind of gives you the option that, oh, I was offering a hoodie with our company logo and no one seems to be backing that. So let me take that away and actually offer something valuable to people. So kind of pay close attention to those details so that you can make the appropriate changes when needed before it's too late. And this graph here kind of shows our funding progress. So you can see we kind of had a pretty good first day and then kind of goes down. So it kind of goes in waves a little bit. And then at the last day, this is kind of the procrastinator section where, hey, it's almost over. So yeah, let's go ahead and back, which really helped us get, you know, 300% funded. So there are definitely no days off when running a crowdfunding campaign. Every day is an opportunity to make adjustments that will help you raise as much money as you can during the campaign period. So, you know, when I was running it, I was constantly looking for ways to make my project more attractive to users, ways to clear out any confusions that people would have, because there is a way that people can comment and ask questions and stuff, and also find new avenues to bring more traffic to the page. If you look at that chart, you can see that, you know, the money kind of came in waves, like it would spike and then kind of plateau, spike, kind of plateau. And like all those waves can be traced back to a new strategy I implemented. It's been so long ago that I couldn't tell you what specific thing I did, but I would guess somewhere here was probably when I discovered, hey, I can post on Reddit on this. I would guess. Don't quote me on it though. But basically the main thing here is optimization. Just keep optimizing. You know, once you launch, you have 30 days to really put in the work. So you can sleep after the 30 days is over. So these are like some of the main lessons I definitely learned. I put some random tips at the bottom here, and I can put some more as I think of them. These are just like some basic tips that I use that really helped in my campaign, but that doesn't mean you have to use them. But let me go over them really quick. So I remember I was reading some articles on like some best practices on how to, you know, some best practices for a crowdfunding campaign. And someone recommended that when sending emails to your list, that they found out that plain text emails worked great, even better than like the fancy, you know, newsletter type emails with graphics and logos and things like that. And they said that they felt that it worked great because it gave the user a feel that they're getting just a regular personal email, that they're being addressed as a person. So I did try that for my Kickstarter campaign with my existing list. And yeah, I mean, I do remember getting a bit higher click-through rate from those emails than I usually got with like other regular sales emails. And I do think a large part of that was because with just plain text, I was able to just connect with the user that was reading it and made it seem like it was a person talking to a person as opposed to just a big ad. So that's something to keep in mind. And hey, maybe it won't work in your case, so I don't know, but it worked for me, so that's why I put it here. Kind of already went over this, but your target audience for the product should obviously be your target audience for the Kickstarter, because no one who's not your friend or family is really going to care more about helping you make your product than someone who needs it. So if you know your product, you know what type of person would need it, then that's the type of person to focus on for the Kickstarter. Already kind of went over this, but don't spend too much energy and resources on giving people t-shirts and mugs as a reward for their contributions. In the end, what they really want is the product. Okay, so this one is definitely, if I could only keep one of those random tips, it would be this one. Basically, someone has to own the project. Like the Kickstarter campaign, someone has to own it. Someone has to, be willing to, die on this hill for this project. While a campaign can be a team effort, in the end, there must be one main person who is running it, whose success depend on it. You can delegate tasks to different people, but there has to be one person who at the end of the day owns the project. And, it's like team exercises are great and all, but what can happen if you're not careful is people will assume, oh, well, this person will be doing the project, or this person will be doing this. Oh, well, it's 9 p.m. and I'm sleepy, so I'm going to go to sleep because Johnny will, finish the marketing out for the night. And that's always a recipe for disaster. So yeah, whatever the project is, know that there has to be one person who is definitely in charge and responsible for the entire project. Start preparing for the Kickstarter as soon as you know you might want to do one. So that's kind of what I was talking about with starting to build your audience. So it's like, yeah, build your audience, start building relationships with people who have access to your audience. Basically, don't just decide today, like, okay, I'm going to do a Kickstarter for this. And then next week you learn something, no, like definitely spend time planning it out. People want to feel like they're part of something, like they help make something bigger than themselves happen. They want to be part of an exclusive club. So kind of use all those, natural human tendencies to essentially increase the value of your crowdfunding campaign to your potential backers. Maybe you can give them early access to, your product, getting a discount, or just think of different ways. How do you make them feel like they're a part of this journey with you? And this is really what's going to help you get organic traffic too, because if I'm backing something and I feel like, man, I am right in the trenches. I feel like I'm right in the trenches with this founder. I want to share it with my friends. I want to share it on social media so more people can donate to it. So kind of use that, a human's natural tendency to just want to be part of a club, especially an exclusive club, and just give your users like a great experience. This is also very important. That's one thing I didn't know, but once you launch a crowdfunding campaign, random people will just start contacting you, offering you their services. They'll be saying things like, hey, like for X amount of money, I can get you featured on the homepage. And they'll make all kinds of promises. And it's not really saying this to scare you, because some of these people do run legitimate businesses. But just be careful and do your research before you just get an email and just accept that, oh, I'm just going to do this thing. And because some random person promised me they could get me 5,000 more clicks on my campaign. So be careful, vet them for sure, read reviews, do your research, because if they're doing something illegal, like illegal in the sense that illegal for Kickstarter terms and conditions, you could get your campaign banned, which would be very unfortunate if you spent all this time and resources into making your campaign and then you trusted some rando and then they banned your campaign because you broke the rules and stuff. So be careful with that. With that said, I did get one of those emails. Well, I got 100 of them. And one company was like, hey, for like $200, we will get you ranked in the high enough to be discovered like organically on Kickstarter. And I did my research with them and saw that they seem legit and thought, hey, for $200, sure, let's see what happens. And they did end up actually delivering and helping us get ranked on the Discover tabs on Kickstarter, which, as you see earlier, did give us about 8% of our total funding, which I'm sure they didn't contribute all of that 8%, but it was worth the $200 in that case. But definitely be careful and be aware that that's a thing. People will just flood your inbox promising you the world. Don't fall for it every time. And last tip is you probably will end up needing to spend money to promote your campaign. It's like, so do factor that out in your plan. You basically, all that to say is obviously try to get as much free traffic as you can, but for certain things you may have to pay for it. Like during our Kickstarter campaign, I remember we ran some Facebook ads, for example, especially during that last day when, because the closer you are to the end, the more people convert because they don't want to miss out. So yeah, we did some Facebook ads to also bring more traffic. So there's a lot you can do for free, but just be aware that, yeah, you'll probably end up needing to spend some money to really promote your campaign. So factor that out in your costs for how much you're asking and how you're going to deliver everything. So, man, that was a lot of words, but we powered through it. Thank you for still sticking with me here. And so this is the part that I will kind of leave it up for questions if anyone have any specific questions they have about running a crowdfunding campaign.
I have a question. For those who don't know me, Edwin Williams, founder and CEO of Zenhammer, the pocket office for subcontractors. One of my questions is time commitment. So when you're doing a Kickstarter campaign, what was your daily time commitment from when the campaign started to when the campaign ended?
Basically, anytime I wasn't sleeping, I was doing something related to that campaign. That was my experience because, I mean, one, it was definitely, in a lot of ways, a one-man team. I mean, I did have Luke's support at the part of that Kickstarter, but like, it wasn't this big company with a lot of team members at that part of it. So definitely had to focus a ton on just managing everything. Essentially, I knew that for those 30 days, the campaign was going to be my life.
Bro, could you also kind of touch on a little bit about like the concept of stretch goals and kind of the impact that those can play in your marketing efforts for getting people, feeding back into that incentive of, hey, I want to share this with my friends because it helps me get something out of it. Can you kind of touch on what the strategy looked like for that?
Yeah, so stretch goals are basically extra benefits you give to your backers if you raise a certain amount of money over what you're asking for. For example, in our specific campaign, our goal was $20,000. So once we reach that goal, obviously we want to raise as much as we can. So it was kind of thinking, okay, how do we incentivize people to keep on giving, and how do we incentivize people who have already given to either give more or to share more about it? So essentially we had different goals. And if you go to our Kickstarter page, you can see the different stretch goals. It's like, hey, if we reach $30,000, we'll give every backer this extra thing on top of what they're already getting. If we reach X amount, which then makes people like, hey, if I only donated to the campaign and didn't share about it, and then I find out, man, if they raise 10 more thousand, I'll also get something for free, then I'm more likely to then share about it and stuff. So that is a great way to keep people interested, keep people giving once you've, you know, reached your goal, because obviously you do want to raise as much money as you can because you never know.
I got some questions. Hey there,
Hey,
guys.
Josh.
How are you? It's good to see you.
Glad you got to join us.
Well, it's good to hear about your experience here. I was wondering whether you actually changed your tactics once you hit your initial goal, like going back to any of the media that had initially been like, hey, you know, you haven't got a product yet, because you've basically reached that point. And what your advice would be on putting a video together? You know, like often you're following a person rather than just the product. It's like, do you believe in that person? Is it important that you get a really well produced, high quality video? And how do you present yourself in that video to maximize your chance of actually getting funded?
Yeah, so we definitely did have plenty of video updates because Kickstarter specifically made it very easy to reach back out to anyone that backed your project. Like you can easily just send mass emails to them and, you know, post different updates to keep them just in the loop with what you're doing. And I do think that, yes, after we reached the first 20,000, we did have a video. And I mean, for myself, I'm already pretty comfortable doing video and stuff, but it really doesn't need to be some high quality video. People do want to know who is behind something. They do want to see a face. It's definitely a lot easier to trust a face than just, you know, you don't know who's doing this. It's just some words behind a keyboard. So yeah, I mean, definitely video updates was great. It showed people that, you know, there's life behind the project. It's not just some, you know, just mysterious random thing happening. So yeah, I definitely highly recommend doing video updates to talk to your audience and really ask for their help too, because, you know, a lot of the time you just need to ask for it. You know, someone can watch your video and if it's just like, hey, this is an update, bye, cool. But you could be like, hey, this is an update. This is where we're at with the project. This is why if we raise X amount more, that's going to help us do X so much better than we would have, because they're already your fans. So, you know, communicate with them because they're on your side. And then naturally, they will go out there and be your ambassadors.
I'll ask another question. As you said earlier, when coming up with your rewards, it was about the product. Myself and several others on here are SaaS companies. What would be your advice in giving or developing rewards appropriate to our offering, as we're not giving out a product, but a service?
I would say you could always, because the SaaS is like subscription based, you could always give like 1 year of, you know, your product, you know, something like that, to where it's not, yeah, you're not necessarily making like a lifelong commitment, but if someone is able to get a 1 year subscription of Zenhammer for a lot cheaper than they would get it if they weren't a backer, then that does kind of seem like a no-brainer, you know? So, and depending on your specific product, maybe you have extra add-ons, right? Because there's usually multiple different plans. So, hey, if for the price of the basic plan, I can also just secure, you know, advanced plans, you know, that's also part of it. For example, there's a company that we still use for ActionVFX to this day called Invoiced, and they do, essentially it's like an invoicing system to deal with clients and stuff. And I was a very early supporter of that. And because of that, there are some features that we get that we're not paying for, but we just got those features because, hey, we were an early supporter of that company. So there's like always different ways that you can just incentivize people and make them feel that, hey, if I do back this specific project and it does become successful, then I'm winning big here. So. Anyone else?
Ro, when you were talking to influencers, did you end up paying some of them, or what was your strategy to actually get them on board?
I did end up paying an influencer, which was very fortunate. Basically, we had different types of influencers. As I said, like the news sites, they were definitely the hardest to get. But once I managed to work on them one by one and they started posting about it, that kind of worked out. And then you have like the influencers as far as people in our industry that, you know, either make tutorials for visual effects, you know, they have like a large filmmaking audience. Then these people, a lot of the time, if I didn't already have a prior relationship with them, it would be free products essentially. Like, hey, you don't even need to back this project. You know, if we're able to make it successful, we'll give you everything for free. So that works great too, because if someone is an influencer in your field, then most likely they do have a need for whatever you're making. So we kind of leverage that a lot. So, hey, we'll give you free stuff if you post about it. And I mean, a lot of people just was very cool with that because who doesn't like free stuff? I do think it's funny that you joined, Josh. For those who don't know, like the person that I said had a Kickstarter campaign to make a Mac version of their software is none other than Joshua Davies right here.
Yeah, there was also a previous Founders Meetup featuring Joshua Davies, and that's on our YouTube channel as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, you guys, your Kickstarter was better than ours. So yeah, you did a better job for sure.
Well, you inspired us and made us know that it was possible.
Ours was a somewhat easier task. We already had a product and we were saying, yeah, we'll remake the product over here. You actually went and made a new thing, as it were. Yeah. But like, yeah, it's, you guys, you know, you're very inspirational. You keep inspiring stuff.
Well, thank you. And that's the thing, right? Because that's also one of the goals I wanted to convey to everyone is that, you know, before I saw someone in our industry do a Kickstarter campaign and succeed at it, like the idea that this was something that was even available to me as an option, like I didn't have that. And a lot of the times that's how it works. You have a lot of options, but you just don't know, like you don't even know to consider it because you've just never, you know, sat down to think, wait a second, people could literally just pay me to make this thing. What a crazy idea, but then it works, so.
Hey, Ro, we're getting a couple of questions in chat. Are you able to see those? Or you want me to read them out to you?
Yeah, let me go ahead and read it. All right, so I got a question from Amy. You mentioned crowdfunding was one of several ways you raise money for your business. What were the other ways? Did you pursue several at once? Yeah, so I would say the main ways we raised money for it was existing sales from our current products. Like I remember I did like a specific sale on our website. Like, hey, you know, we're doing this sale for these products that we already have, but it's really a way to raise money for this new thing. So that was a thing. I did spend my own personal savings on the project as a whole to, you know, try to make it happen. And then of course, like the Kickstarter was like a huge part of it. And one thing that also happened after the Kickstarter was we realized that some people didn't get to back the project. Like maybe they were procrastinators and they didn't get to back it during the 30 days. So I remember we actually give some similar options on our website. That was a bit more expensive than the Kickstarter, but kind of a, hey, if you missed the Kickstarter, you can still pre-order this at a great discount just not as the same discount because you need to make them work for it. But yeah, so I never really pursued any like seed funding or anything like that. So it was all very bootstrapped in that sense. So, all right, and we got a question from Joseph. Joseph says he's the founder of Reader app, an ebook publishing platform. So I'm asking, if you're raising funds, do you have to hype up expectations about your company? It's like, I have a very interesting take on what good hype actually is. It's like you never want to, I would disagree that you need to blow things out to be bigger than they are. Like, oh, you know, like let's make this seem like the biggest thing. It's like, I don't think you really need to do that. I think the main thing is trust. Like you need to, like your audience need to be able to trust that when you can do what you say you're doing, and you know that if they back your project, it's not just going to be a waste of their time. So I would say, yeah, less hyping up expectations, but simply trying your best to communicate that we are trustworthy, we do know what we're doing, we are able to do what we say we're going to do if we get that money. And yeah, I think that's going to be a way better strategy in the long run. If I misunderstood your question, feel free to add a follow-up here because I do want to make sure I get it right. And as far as like building hype is if you have an audience and you have a date, like a release date, that's always going to be a great way to build hype. Like, hey, it's launching in 2 weeks. You do a little countdown or something like that. Get people excited, like, because again, once that day hits, that the Kickstarter or the whatever platform you use, when your campaign launches, you do want people that's been expecting it, that are ready to donate to it, that are ready to share about it. So in that sense, yes, hype is good, but not hype up expectations about your company. Simply present yourself in the best light you can possibly present yourself.
I actually had a question for either you, Ro, or for you, Josh. For, let's say you're wanting to do another, let's say you've launched a company and you want to do a expansion. For Josh, it was jump to another platform. For Ro, it was launch ActionVFX. Mm-hmm. In your experience, do you consider that a good way of expanding your offerings through Kickstarter or crowdfunding? As a viable, like for instance, in your next feature set, are you going to follow a similar route, or was that a one-off type thing?
It's like for me, I remember after we did the Kickstarter, I did think, this is probably not the only Kickstarter we'll do, just because of how the process worked. Because the advantage is essentially you launching something new and there needs to be an investment for that. So if your campaign is successful, not only do you pre-sell what you'll be creating, but you raise the money needed to create it, and then also validate your idea that, yes, this is a path worth taking. So it definitely does mitigate risk quite a bit. So in that sense, like we haven't had to do one yet, mainly because ActionVFX has been able to be successful enough that we just invest in doing what we've been doing. But it's also not something that I would rule out because like it makes sense. It's a good strategy. And if it succeeds, you really don't lose anything at all. You keep all equity in the company and keep making all your decisions, and all you get is some more happy customers. So
I think from our perspective, it's also a great advertising platform for, you know, getting yourself out there and definitely getting some form of coverage. But I think the risk part that, you know, Ro said, where we had a product that worked on PC, we wanted to port it to Mac, but we wanted to know that there was an audience there that was big enough to make it worthwhile. So for all your market research, people will answer a survey very differently and compared to the way that they'll actually put their money, you know, on the line. So it worked as a way of saying to us, yeah, it is worth investing this money. We could have afforded to do the product anyway, because I think we raised about $75,000, but it was like, really, is there an appetite there? And even though we're in a completely different place now with Apple's about to change their platform, and we could arguably use the same process, it's like, you know, the company's larger and the product's larger. So the amount we would need would be significantly larger. Is there a user base there that's willing to, you know, are there, you know, 1,000 people that we can find that upfront are going to pay for us to do that development cost? It's also a good way of not just the risk in terms of investment, is that is this a task that you really want to do? You know, us converting the product from one platform to another is a fairly sort of thankless task. You've already got the product, it's over there. Why on earth do we want to go through all the hell of making it again to put it over here? So yeah, it can work really well for that. But then once you become like a commercial entity, it does get harder to justify running a Kickstarter. It's like you see all these videos that like the video looks more like it costs $75,000 on its own. And you're like, why is this person running a Kickstarter? They clearly got millions in investment already, and then they're asking for millions more here. Did they just burn out them investors' money and they need some more? So it's like, it's a bit of a hard balance once your company's got going. But yeah, if you do it right, like, you know, like these guys did, I think it's really successful in also just getting the word out there in a really effective way. And it's that sort of grassroots thing. You know, they were making really high quality stuff, which is like industry level, but there was also this grassroots element, like you're supporting the new guys, the new generation. And it like, that works really, really well with Kickstarter. If you can, you know, work those two sides, it's a quality product, but also, you know, you want to back the people behind it.
Great. All right, let's take one last question if someone has one, and then we will wrap this up.
How's your new release going? You know, this is all about ActionVFX, but what about all the new stuff? Surely you get to tell us about that too.
Oh, it's going well. I mean, we didn't do a Kickstarter for it, but it's been going pretty good. Obviously, it's like, well, we're all founders here, so I can let you know, like you launch a new website and then there's like so many different little bugs that you find out and then you need to fix them and address them. So it's definitely like, man, I wish websites was just an easier process to do, but we're ironing things out and we'll get everything patched down. Great.
That's awesome. Why don't you at least tell us about what you guys launched?
Yeah, so we launched a new brand essentially called Creator Vault, and it's a bit similar to ActionVFX. I just posted a link to it on the chat. It's a bit similar to ActionVFX, except ActionVFX focus solely on visual effects artists. So people blowing things up, shooting guns in movies and doing blood effects and all those types of things. But you know, one thing we also realized as we did ActionVFX is not only did we, like there's so much more to filmmaking than blowing things up, because there are different types of filmmakers, from people making weddings to people making commercials to people like creative agencies and, you know, church videos, church productions. And so there was like so much other stuff that we could do. So we decided to essentially use our skill and our ActionVFX user base to launch this new brand, essentially, that would focus a lot more on just all of the other creative aspects of filmmaking that doesn't involve people getting blown up and things burning down and stuff like that. So it's definitely a very big thing for us, and very excited to see just what impact we can have in the industry with it. Hey, we got free promotion. Thanks, David.
hey, I figure we might as well, you know, make you a sponsor. So you've been hosting this whole time.
That's sweet. Well, hey, thanks everyone for joining us. This was awesome. And let me go ahead and paste my email in the chat right here. If anyone has any questions about just running a Kickstarter campaign, definitely reach out to me there, and I will gladly be fine to answer any specific questions you may have. Again, I'll leave this doc up that I shared at the beginning of this presentation, so you can just go back and review it anytime you want. I think it'll be good if I add my email in there as well. So yeah, thank you for following. I hope you learned something new. And as always, be sure to check us out at myfoundersforge.com, and do check out our social media. Be sure to like our Facebook, Instagram, just kind of stay up to date with what we're doing, because we really do have a great startup ecosystem just building up in this area. And I just can't wait to see what all we can do together. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.